The big question now, is the grand old party dead? And if so, what's going to take its place? I can tell you right now, nearly half of you are saying it is dead. So far, 16% GOP narrative is that, listen, the whole thing is out of place. Only 15% think the GOP is alive. 17% say it would be more liberal. 19% say it would be more conservative. Whatever you think, we know for a fact the GOP is in tatters, and many believe it's going to look completely different when this whole thing is said and done. What will the values be? I mean, before, I think they were simple, right? It used to be God, country, family, self-reliance, and freedom. I'm not sure if those are still the core or what's been added to it, but a lot of people are saying that conservatives are turning on everything, even Citizens United. Lifelong Republicans refusing to take a stand on a lot of things that they used to stand for. Back with me, Charlie, Ford, Gina, and Adam. Gina, I got to ask you about this because this battle is going on. Even today, one of the big things is like, hey, Citizens United was a bum deal, you know, too much money in politics. Typically, you would think those are Bernie Sanders, you know, the sentiments of a Bernie Sanders crowd, but it wasn't. These are old school Republicans.
Well, I do think that it is high time the GOP, and I think the Tea Party has been screaming about this for a long time. I think it is high time that the GOP admits that there's too much crony capitalism on both sides of the aisle. That includes the Republican side, and I think that's what you're hearing. I think it's a rational statement, Charles, and I think it's something that you've talked about many times on the show. I don't think this is in any way a loss of the GOP soul.
One of the kings of crony capitalism, self-admitted. Listen, I like Donald. I know Donald Trump a long time, probably longer than most people here. He's a good guy. I really like him. But one of his hallmarks is crony capitalism, and that's kind of one of the contradictions here. He admits it. He brags about it. He gave money to Hillary. She showed up to his wedding. That's called crony capitalism, by the way. It was all about his business. That's the wedding. His personal life bleeds into his business life. And I will say this, and here's the scary thing. I mean, you know, why are all these traditions of conservatism being challenged? Well, obviously, you have a base that's very angry, and rightly so on a lot of levels, like the ignoring of immigration as a major issue for the base that the establishment did that. That's horrible they did that, and now they're paying for it. But I'm going to say this. You look, when I talk to people about some of these Donald Trump rallies and some of his campaign events, they border on violent, and sometimes they are violent. They're angry. I get the anger, but it's about time that he puts an end to this. I mean, listen, there was a fight at the last one. Connell McShane was there. I've heard about certain people getting threatened inside these places. I have sources that tell me this. This is a very bad thing. It's one thing to take the anger, try to move it in a positive direction, but when you stoke that anger and where it becomes like something out of a bad movie, you know, about the 1930s.
Let me bring in Ford on that.
He's got to change that.
Ford, you know, this is something we are hearing more and more. I think it's been asked to Donald Trump on more than one occasion. Not a clear answer on that yet, but we do see a couple of interesting things here. We see people who are fed up and angry, and it's being stoked to a certain way, or they're reacting a certain way. But we're also seeing where people that 6 months ago would have never, ever apologized for Planned Parenthood go on TV and tell us the virtues of Planned Parenthood. What's going on?
Well, I do think the GOP is changing before our eyes. Let me say this. People are not only just angry, Charlie, they're also frightened, okay? Because remember, fright, it can turn into anger as well. What I will say is it's really becoming a come-to-Jesus moment for social conservatives, business conservatives, and neocons in the Republican Party, and that's where we're seeing these positions change a little bit.
I think
hold on a second. Let's bring someone else in.
I want to make this point.
No, let Gina say what you have to say. I'm sorry.
There's not one single candidate in this election that hasn't enjoyed the privileges of crony capitalism. It's the people that are rising up and saying, we want a candidate who's going to commit to stopping the crony capitalism.
Well, none of them will.
I think
But none of them will.
Well, that's not true. I think that some of them have spoken on it. It's definitely a platform issue for Donald Trump.
Well, they speak about it, but they all practice it. They all engage in it like crazy.
But that's every single presidential candidate on both sides of the aisle for how many decades? I think the idea is the American people are calling for a stop
Adam,
to it,
let me bring you in on this, Adam. Adam, let me ask you, what do you think? The GOP in tatters, I put the Twitter poll out there. 49% are saying it is dead. It is dead. Only 15% say it's still alive. What are we going to see? What's going to morph out of this process?
Well, first of all, I think we should all bring this in for a landing by talking about what's really going on. It's not just anger and anxiety, it's impatience. The American people are impatient with the fact that government just simply isn't working anymore, and that a lot of the things in this country aren't either. And this election is not about ideology. and it's not about partisanship. I'll tell you what it's about: leadership. And people are making judgments every day in this campaign, testing out the various candidates on both sides of the aisle, by the way, to see who can really measure up. And I think the bottom line in all this for the party is good. I like competition. I think it's good for the party that we're struggling to find our new identity. I think we do have to find a way to lead in difficult times, which these are. And I think this campaign will well serve all of this.
Well, it depends. It depends how you're playing this. I mean, I really do worry that, listen, I understand the notion that, for years the establishment of the Republican Party said we can't stop illegal immigration. We can't stop it. You told that to average people who saw us put men on the moon and, develop iPhones and do all this great stuff, yet we can't stop illegal immigration. Donald Trump has hit that nerve. Thank God he has. But I am telling you, when you start appealing to the base instinct of the crowd, that becomes a really bad thing. Listen, there's founding fathers, put in all those checks and balances for that one reason. And I think when you go to some of these Donald Trump events, I am not underplaying this when I tell you this. They are angry, nasty people people at their.
I will say this, guys. I remember the same sort of narrative being presented about Tea Party events, and I went to at least a dozen of them.
With no evidence.
But I went to a dozen of them, and you can find one or two people when there's a crowd of 4,000. When there's a crowd of 20,000, you can find a couple of crazies. But you know what? It's something that we should look at, because Donald Trump wants to be a uniter. That's what he's telling the world, and that's what we really need in this country.